So if you guys are new to the channel, my name is Luke. We talk about all things personal finance here, whether that be making money or keeping it. So today we're going to be talking about extra places. Now, what are extra places? A bookmaker may pay up to, let's say, 6 places in a horse race. So essentially, let's say you're doing a £20 each way bet. What you're doing is you're betting £20 on that horse to win and £20 on that horse to place in the top 4, top 5, top 6, something like that. Then what you're going to do is you're going to lay the win and you're going to lay the place. Now, where we make our money here is the amount of places that each service pays is different. So the bookmaker may pay if your horse finishes in the top 6, whereas your Smarket's lay stake is on the horse to finish in the top 4. So if the horse finishes 5th or 6th, you win your back bet because it placed in that top 6, and you also win your lay bet because the horse did not finish in the top 4. So essentially what we try and do is we take horses at matches that give us low qualifying losses and good odds, so that if our horse does land in one of those extra places, we get a massive amount of profit. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'll just cover the sort of strategies that people employ when they decide what sort of matches they're going to take, and in a future video I will go in depth on my personal strategy. So in general, there's a few different strategies that people look at. One of the most common strategies is looking at the percentage rate and aiming for a low qualifying loss. So what I'll do is I'll pull up Odds Monkey's Extra Place Matcher and we'll go through the different strategies. So we've got the odd matcher up here and we're going to go through the different strategies. So the most common that you'll see a lot of people use is this percentage rate. So what people are kind of looking for is above that 95% rate, which means you have a small qualifying loss because the back and the lay odds for both the win and the place are pretty close. This one's quite good because you can get on a lot of horses with just a small qualifying loss. The only catch of this strategy is it will be hard to get on a lot of horses with the required percentage being quite high, and also it doesn't really take into account the back odds as well. So a lot of people also say, as well as that 95% plus, they're looking for back odds of maybe 10 plus. But that's the thing, with different people's strategies, they will use different things to adjust how they kind of want to do it. So moving on from this, people adjust the percentage that they require depending on how many extra places the bookmaker pays. So maybe the bookmaker pays 2 extra places rather than just the 1. They might drop the percentage to 92, 90%. If they're paying 3, they might even go as low as 85%. And also people will adjust it depending on how many horses they're on. If they're already on 10 out of the 15 horses, then they'll be a lot more okay with taking higher qualifying losses to just make sure they've got the rest of the field covered. And then another strategy that people use is looking solely at these implied odds. So the implied odds are the odds that your horse is going to finish in the extra place. It essentially takes the profit that you get if you get the extra place and divides it by the qualifying loss. So essentially this is how many times you could bet on the horse. And if you got it once in those times, you'd break even. So implied odds of 10 essentially means if the horse finishes in that extra place once in every 10 times, you'll break even. So simply put, with something like that, the higher the odds, the more profit you get, but also the less likely it is to finish in that extra place. So a strategy a lot of people use is they look at the implied odds and they go for the highest ones and hope that they finish in the extra place because that's when they get their profit. So I'll go into depth in the specific formula that people use, but essentially what they do is they take the runners, they times it by 2 and divide it by the extra places, kind of working out specifically what's good value and get on anything above that. Now that takes into account the back odds and all the other odds, which the percentage strategy doesn't, but what that doesn't take into account is the qualifying loss. So you might see the qualifying loss is much higher on a £10 stake. Now what you can do with extra places, regardless of what strategy you pick, is adjust these stakes to make qualifying losses and profits and also liability that you're comfortable with. So you'll notice when you start getting into extra places, there's a lot of liability. So if we take this example with Bounty Pursuit, we've got a £10 back stake at back odds of 4. That works out to be £30.91 of liability on the win lay and £9.27 on the lay. But if we take something with a lot higher back odds, let's say Bounty Pursuit actually had 45 back odds. If you're looking at the exact same stakes of £10, you're looking at almost £350 liability on the win lay and 56 liability on the place lay. So if we're speaking about liability, then I've got to cover shared liability. So shared liability essentially means that if you bet on multiple outcomes, only one can lose. So there's a max amount that you could lose. So if we take a football match, for example, if you back Chelsea to win and then you go on Smarkets and you lay Chelsea to win, but then you also lay Chelsea to draw because you got a back bet from a different bookmaker and you decide to use it on that. You've laid two outcomes. So no matter what happens, one of them has got to win and one of them's got to lose. Or if Real Madrid win, then both bets win. So how does that matter in terms of Smarkets? So if I was to lay Chelsea to win and my liability for that was £100, and then I laid the draw and my liability for that was also £100, you would notice that my balance wouldn't go down by £100. It would stay the exact same, because no matter the outcome, the max amount you can lose in Smarkets is £100. So it only takes down your balance by £100. Similar thing with extra places. If we have this liability here of 347, if that horse wins, we would lose 347 on the win lay in Smarkets. So if we keep every other one of the win lays under that 347, it won't take anything out of our balance and we can get on multiple horses for free. Now, to make things clear, this only works if you use the same exchange. You can't use Smarkets and then try and do that on Betfair at the same time. It needs to be on the exact same exchange. And also, you can't do multiple bets on the same horse, because that would add to the liability, because there's more that you could lose. And then in regards to the place lay liability, there's a similar idea. So if we look here, we can see that the extra place is third, which means the place marker on Smarkets is the top two. So what it would happen with the place lay is it would take the two highest liabilities, and as long as you don't go over that, that's the max amount it would take. So if we take this specific example, we have 56 here, and then we have 26 down here. So the max amount that we could lose is £82 in place lay liability. So if our liability for anything else is under 26 or under 56, it won't add to it. If it's 50, it won't add to the 56, but it will add to the 26. If we look at another example, let's say He's Our Star is actually 35 back odds. You'll notice that this win lay liability is still under the 347, so it won't take any additional balance to cover that on the win lay, but it will take some additional on the place lay, because we had 26 and 56, so now it'll take an extra £22 of liability to cover that, because 48 is 22 more than 26. And if we were going to do it with the place lay, so let's say we upped these stakes to £35 each way, you would see our liability is now up to £933. So our balance would go down by roughly £600. So the way that we can take advantage of this to get on as many horses as possible is, once we've placed our first back and lay bets, we keep an eye on these liability numbers and we ensure that our win lay liability does not go over that first number that we showed. And then for the place lay liability, we make sure it doesn't go above the first two that we've done if we're wanting to keep our balance above a certain amount. So that's the main things that we have to focus on with extra places. We want to cover as many horses as possible that fit into our strategy, whether that be the percentage match or the implied odds. Then what we're going to do is we're going to back each way. So on the bet slip, you'll see a tick for an each way. So I don't think I actually explained this. A £20 each way bet will actually take £40 out of your bookmaker account, because it takes £20 to win and £20 for the horse to place. So that's something to be wary of. And also make sure that tick is on for the each way when you're placing that back bet. And then with your lay bets, you're placing two lay bets. One lay bet for the horse not to win, and one lay bet for the horse not to place. But the important thing to cover is a lot of horses and make sure it's under your max liability. I hope this video has been useful. I'm sure I've probably not explained it the best, so let me know in the comment section below if you've got any questions. It'll be useful not only for you, but for other people if they have the same issue. And hopefully I'll cover it in depth when I go into detail with my specific EP strategy and how I go about finding matches. If this video has been useful, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.